Well, for episode 29, we go stateside once again, and I'm really, really pleased to have another member of the AMX Global family alongside me. Hello and welcome, Mr. Brad Dalton. Bradley, good to see you, buddy. It's been a while since we last talked. How are you doing?
Yeah, I'm good, Alex. It has been a while, but I'm doing pretty good. Just hanging out there, filling in on AMX since you've been running around with real life stuff, but just hanging on, filling in the commentary void and, the real life void, trying to balance that action of back and forth.
Brilliant. Well, Brad, what I always ask all of my guests to do is to introduce yourself to the audience, please, in your own time.
So, hey everyone, my name is Brad. I am a predominantly F1 commentator. Started out doing esports commentary during COVID, like a lot of people, and picked up on F1 commentary and moved forward from there. Got introduced to AMX, of course, got connected with Alex here, who's been a great friend and a great mentor for me. And when I'm not doing, virtual commentary stuff, a lot of my real life is watching real life racing and work and getting involved in music and different things outside of the commentary world. But I always try to, find time and come back into the motorsport world. And I make a lot of comments about it, whether it's Twitter, Instagram, commentary on stuff. But that's about me. That sums me up.
Brilliant. Well, Brad, the first question I need to ask is, how did you get bitten by the motorsport bug, and who was the main culprit? Sorry, I mean catalyst on that one.
Yeah, so actually, so growing up, I grew up in a very, very NASCAR driven family. Every Sunday, I remember my dad would go over to my uncle's, whole family affair to get together and watch NASCAR. Daytona 500 was basically a national holiday in my house. I am in, the southeastern US area, so dirt track racing is a big deal. My uncle raced modifieds and late models, and every Saturday night would be at the racetrack. My dad would be there. I'd get to work on the dirt cars, run around the track, watch the cars go around. And that was kind of how things started for me. And then growing up, stuck around with NASCAR for a while. And then it was actually 2019 Hockenheim was where F1 caught my attention.
Right.
So that was a fun race. And I remember laying in bed on a Sunday morning and I happened to have cable with the apartment I was renting, and I was looking for something to watch, and I saw F1, and F1 was something I had seen a lot on social media, and I'd seen a lot of stuff about it. And I was like, I don't really know a lot about F1. So that was my introduction to the world of F1, and it kind of stuck with me from there. And then IMSA and every other motorsport in between has slowly followed since 2019, 2020.
So, yeah, I mean, it's great to hear that your uncle ran in modifieds, and obviously visiting the dirt track. When was the first time Mr. Dalton actually headed to a race circuit? Was it with your uncle, or was it with family, or can you remember how old you were, where it was, what it was you were watching at that point?
Yeah, it was. I would have been little because my uncle, it was, just like every Sunday, it was get together and watch NASCAR. It was every Friday night, every Saturday night for every weekend through the summer. It was dirt track racing, which, again, southeastern US, short quarter mile, half mile dirt tracks. That is the bread and butter of racing around here. It's where most people get their start in racing. So it was every weekend going to the track and being in the pits. That was the thing. And I was probably 4 or 5, and that was where it started. Eventually, economy crashed and things kind of died out. 2008 housing crisis in the US and global recessions. So racing, going every weekend to the track sort of stepped back for a bit, but it was still, racing was still something that ran in the family. Again, every Sunday it was watch NASCAR. If NASCAR was on, it was watch NASCAR and then watch football right after. That was the family routine.
So it was NASCAR followed by the NFL in rapid succession then.
Oh yeah. And Saturday college football. Don't forget Saturdays.
Oh yes, yeah. Especially with the Orange Bowl being a regular staple on college football these days, still a part of it, and which is always good that certain traditions never leave people these days.
Oh
Um,
yeah.
Next question: how did you get involved in commentary? Now, there is always a little bit of a story behind this, so I think we've talked about this at length, but it's a long time since we last had a bit of a chinwag, you and I. But just tell everybody at home how you actually got started in terms of sim racing commentary, predominantly.
Oh, this is a fun little story. So
You got plenty of time.
I So I always enjoyed sort of commentary about stuff and sort of, like sports commentary, that sort of thing was something I enjoyed. And I was a restaurant general manager for a while. So I ran a restaurant and I was working 50, 60, 70 hours a week, 6, 7 days a week. Never really had time to do a lot of stuff, but I did always enjoy sim racing. I have a sim racing rig myself. I had a Logitech G29. I built a gaming PC during COVID. That was just kind of the timing.
Yeah.
And it was, I got into sim racing pretty heavy, tried to get into leagues and do different stuff. And I'm not a fast sim racer. My claim to fame is not that I'm good at sim racing. It's that I enjoy it.
Yeah.
But when I worked at the restaurant I worked at and I ran the restaurant, one of my really good employees was actually going to college for sports broadcasting. He actually works for a news station now, and that's his whole job. Is he travels around and broadcast about different sports events and writes articles, and that's his whole gig. But me and him had a conversation one time about that, and I remember it kind of stuck with me because he's like, "Yeah, I like sports, and I get to just watch sports and talk about it." And I was like, "I like racing. I like sim racing. Let's see it. That would be something cool to get into, but I never had time." Well, 2021 hit and I changed jobs and went to working for a bank, which I'm still working there. But I went from the very chaotic, never knowing days off, never knowing when I was going to be available, to working a very strict 9 to 5, Monday through Friday, weekends off. So my weekends got very boring and I tried to find something to fill the time. So I went to the F1 game forums one day because I was like, I see, I was watching streams and watching a lot of Twitch streams, George Morgan, lots of the big names that you think of now when you think of F1 sim commentary. NASCAR, of course, was broadcast in the US on iRacing. And I was like, that would be something cool to get into. I wonder what the barrier to entry is for that, to do that. So I just Googled and I was looking at different Discord servers, looking for different ways to get into it. Of course, I found the Grid Finder server on Discord and was looking for different leagues. And most of them were European based, and most of them were like Thursdays, Fridays, Saturdays, times that I couldn't accommodate. Yeah. And then I found a random blog post on F1 forums, F1 2019 forums, for a league called Fox's Racing League that was looking for a commentator on Sundays at 8 o'clock Central European time. And I did some quick math and I was like, oh, that's a Sunday afternoon. Mind you, this is Saturday at 5 p.m.
Yeah.
For me. And so it had someone to message. So I joined their server and sent a message to one of the admin and said, hey, I found this post, sent him a link and said, I see you're looking for a commentator. What are you all looking for? When's your next race? And he messages me back overnight. Of course, I'm asleep because time zone. And this is something I've had to get used to with sim racing, is time zone difference.
True.
So he sends me a message overnight and I wake up to it Sunday morning. And he said, hey, you'll want to message Debe. He's the admin. And I said, okay. So I sent him a message and he's like, hey, we've got a race in 4 hours. How are you feeling? Is it something you can do today? And it was Monaco. Right. It was F1 29 or F1 2020 on Monaco. And I was like, yeah, sure. I can do that in 4 hours. I can come up with something. So he sends me a link to their stat sheet that they had for their league and sends me, a couple of things. And I was like, okay, so in 4 hours, I learned how to work OBS. that I was
Right.
vaguely familiar with. But I learned how to set up transitions. I learned how to build scenes. I built a bunch of little prop things, and then I broadcast my first race. And from there, it was just on and on. I ended up, I streamed a little bit on my own YouTube, and then, founded a Twitch for them and set that up and got things going with that. And then, now the league is on the tail end of its ninth season and still going strong. It's rebranded, but, same thing I started off doing back in, what was it, October 21. So I've been doing this for about 2 years now. But yeah, it was just literally scrolling on an F1 forum one day and saying, you know what? I have free weekends now, and this is something I want to try.
And then from there on in, the story continues with joining the team at AMX Global for season 2, where you met me and all the craziness with TJ, Reed, and everybody else. Of course, Marco being the first AMX Global alumni, being an interviewee on this way back when. Marco is a great character. He actually has the record for the second longest episode so far, which was an hour and 35 minutes. Then Phil Kinch from TCR UK blew that out of the water by about another 10-15 minutes or something like that. But we know that Marco is such a great character. There's a whole lot of camaraderie with the team, with Reed, with Evan, with yourself and everybody else. I'm really looking forward to actually jumping back in the saddle.
Oh yeah.
I've got a quick question. Have you commentated on Max Verstappen yet?
I'm not. I was supposed to commentate the
No.
weekend Max was there, and I had something come up and had to get it covered. And then I tuned in because I had a little bit of free time. So I went back and watched the VOD, and I was like, I gave up my chance. Little behind the scenes, I am a big Red Bull fan. Unashamedly a Red Bull fan.
I think the first broadcast we did on AMX, you were actually wearing an Oracle Red Bull Racing shirt as well at the time,
Yep.
which was quite entertaining. I was like, there's me just in a plain T-shirt or something, and then along comes Brad, Red Bull in your face,
Yeah.
But I think the thing is that just goes to show people's characters, that people do have allegiances, favourite teams in motorsport, which I completely understand and appreciate. Brad, what would you say out of your commentary career so far? What have been your biggest highlights to date?
So I think this is gonna sound cliche
No,
a
go
little
for it.
bit,
Go
but
for it.
I think my biggest highlight is having leagues reach out to me and making money doing this. Like that, because the thing is, when I started commentating for FRL that turned into pole position racing,
Yeah.
it was doing something I enjoyed for the sake of I enjoyed it and I wanted to do it.
Yeah.
And it's really cool to see how that's, grown and blossomed out, because one of the things that I did that for a couple seasons and I was finally like, you know what, I want to pursue this a bit more. And actually TJ from AMX had reached out to me during their season 1 or somewhere in season 1.5, but with the way their schedule worked in that season, I didn't have availability for it because it was right in the middle of my work days. And then they reached out to me again on Instagram right at the end of season 1.5 and said, hey, Brad, we want to connect, send us a message. So I did on Discord, and it was like, hey, I've talked to you all before. Sweet. What's changed with the scheduling? How are things looking? And getting to do that. And then also having other leagues reach out to me and say, hey, we've seen your work. What's your availability? How do you, feel with this? And even just having that home of, AMX and pole position racing, because my October was really busy, just like yours was, Alex. And I didn't get to commentate pole position racing the entirety of October. I missed 5 races. And so I went back Sunday night, just a couple of days ago, and got back in the saddle. And, they were all messaging me during October. Hey, how are you doing? We miss you. How are things going? When are you back? And then getting to go back in and say, hey guys, I'm back this weekend, getting to commentate and, seeing all the numbers come back. It's just cool because it's like it's one of those moments where, you know, you're doing something you enjoy and other people are enjoying it for the fact that you're doing it. It's not
Hmm.
work. It's something you enjoy and you're doing something you enjoy. And I think that's the big highlight for me with the entire thing.
I think it was also pretty cool when Brad actually reached out to me to help him with his first ever show reel, which was actually pretty cool because then all of a sudden I get pardon my French here, a shit ton of spam on my Discord DMs thanks to this man here. But it, the thing is that as a commentator, that where that you feel appreciated, and it doesn't give you an ego as such, because it's like it makes you keeps both feet planted on terra firma, doesn't it? Because you're like, this is where I made my start. This is where my roots are. This is where
Yep.
I started this journey. And I think that's a really, really good point to put across, that having leagues reach out to you and asking you for your availability. And now you understand when I get busy, like
Yep.
it's crazy. But it is also a good thing, because then at least, like, hang on a second, this first impression I made with Fox FRL, now PPR, and with AMX, and now all these leagues are coming to me and they want to pay me for what I do. It is actually quite a satisfying feeling. I wouldn't say it's an egotistical feeling. It's more of a satisfying feeling, because now you know that you add value to a broadcast. You add that sort of dynamics. You have your own commentary style, and people appreciate that, don't they?
Yeah, it's honestly humbling to an extent because it really does. Like, I don't consider myself like an arrogant person.
Hmm.
I try to be confident with what I do and I know what I'm doing, but it really does, it hits that point for me where it's like, wait a minute, like there's thousands of people that do what I do, and you're sure it's me, right? Like,
Mm.
you all are sure it's me. Um
Yeah.
so cuz it really does hit that point, and there's been moments even during, like, my commentary times where it's been challenging to balance, sim racing commentary with real life obligations. And there's been moments, with AMX, there was a point where, there were races at 6 a.m., 5 a.m. my time. And I had to turn those down, not because I didn't want to do them, but it was because, outside obligations. I can't exactly be yelling at a, microphone while, I've got, people asleep in the house.
Hmm.
It just becomes one of those, like, it's hard to balance it, and it's very humbling to get this much opportunity and see different leagues reach out, see different people reach out and just say, hey, I like what you do, I like your style, and seeing people who are much better at this than me, you know getting involved. Team Redline being on AMX, that's one of those things where, when AMX announced that Team Redline partnership, I was like, I actually remember asking you and saying, I don't know if I'm qualified for this. Like, this is one of those things where it's like,
Yeah.
I feel like this is outside of my skill set. Um,
I remember that conversation distinctly, because the first thing I said to Brad folks was, look, be yourself, do what you do, you'll be fine. And I'll give Brad his due. He nailed it. He absolutely nailed it, because it's never easy when you've got one of the biggest powerhouses, if not now the biggest powerhouse since Oracle Red Bull Racing Esports, joined forces with Redline, which has made it even more bananas. And they do say bananas is good, especially if your name is Guy Fieri. Um, there's the first kitchen or chef reference in this show ever, and it had to be a stateside one as well. But yeah,
oh yeah.
I think it's when the announcement started coming. Next level racing, then Redline, and then on a broadcast having Max Verstappen compete, which was, and people might say to me, well, yeah, well, he's a three-time world champion, yeah, but he's also one of the best sim racers out there. Most of the time, if he's not at a track, he's at his sim in Monte Carlo in his apartment playing. And there's even been when, because if people don't already know, Kelly PK is his girlfriend.
Yep.
And Kelly's daughter has been on multiple occasions disturbing Max when he's on the sim, which has gone viral on social media. And I think that's it's really really cool that he's got a girlfriend who is a mum, but also make sure that he's always on point. And I still remember Max's days in karting, even though at that point I wasn't a commentator until 2017.
Mhm.
But the way that he was as a karter, and now you see, we're sort of seeing a Max in a stage of his career where he isn't touchable. He is untouchable. Okay, yeah, there's been a couple of moments where there's been some faux pas from Red Bull, but by the by,
Mhm.
he's now been the person with the most race wins in one season. One season, folks, and he's just done that at Interlagos this past weekend when we were recording this. But he hasn't. I think he's become a bit more humorous when there was a particular reel on Instagram where they were showing the different signs and like say honey badger for like Danny Rick, and then
Yep.
you had the spaghetti and the tree for the pasta and the tree, and he couldn't get it first of all, and then he started taking the Mickey out of his own surname. Where it had and it had the pan in the middle, and he went, "Oh, Verstappen," just started being an infantile kid, which was absolutely hilarious because you saw the sense of humour that Max has got. And I think now that he's got that pressure off of his system, he knows he's going to have the number one on the car next year with the RB20. But I think a lot of people don't realise how much emphasis he's put into Redline, and
Mhm.
I think you're seeing a lot of these drivers. Is one of his best buddies runs at McLaren, Lando Norris, also a Team
Yep.
Redline alumni. Imagine that. Norris and Verstappen on a Team Redline AMX production. That would be absolutely freaking ridiculous if that would ever happen.
I
Max, Lando, make it happen.
I would clear anything I had scheduled that day. I I would clear everything for that day just to be on board.
Yeah. Um, Social media does have some funny moments on it, Brad.
It does,
It
yeah.
does. The thing is, before this broadcast, I'm actually going to social media as we speak on my phone because don't worry, Brad, your respective details are in the description below. Right, okay. I'm going to take you back to Instagram.
Oh boy.
Okay,
Oh
now
boy.
22nd of July, 2022,
Okay.
in Richmond, Kentucky,
Yep.
and the the picture is now going up on the screen. It's going, "Tell me you're dating Anna without telling me you're dating Anna, and what are you wearing?" What on earth is that? Was it sort of like a Halloween costume planned a bit early?
Oh boy. So I'm actually gonna pull up my Instagram and go back to this
I'm going to show
just
you
so
the
I can
picture now,
recall.
Brad.
Yep. So we had just moved.
Yeah.
Um I bought a grill because yeah, another fun fact when I started sim racing commentary, I was in a tiny one bedroom apartment that had one door.
Oh.
One door, one bed, one bathroom. So I would commentate sitting in the bedroom
Hmm.
while Anna was asleep in the bed with noise canceling headphones in. So that way she couldn't hear me. She'd take her Sunday afternoon nap
Mhm.
while I did commentary. And so when we moved, I got a grill, of course, because we moved into a house and had a garage. And I was like, I'm getting a grill. So she bought that at a TJ Maxx. Because she is a big Halloween person. We
Right.
have a black cat, of course. Halloween decorations are up year round. That's how things are around here.
Mhm.
So she bought that and said, "If I buy this, will you wear it?" And I said, "Oh, absolutely, I'll wear it while I grill." So I put it on. That's the first time I put it on. Came out from starting the grill, and she was like, "I want a photo of this." And I was like, "Okay, take the photo." And took that photo, and I turned around and made pancakes.
It's quite funny. That's something we would call in the United Kingdom a pinny, like a pinafore. It's a English posh term for an apron, or you know. But hey, well, at least the main thing was you were absolutely game for it when your other half said, "Are you going to wear it?" Yeah, and you're a man of your word, which I absolutely admire and respect for doing that, mate. For having the cojones to do that. Um, Now, favorite racing drivers, of course, we have talked about someone that you were completely fangirl over. We are talking about the legend that is three-time Formula One world champion Max Verstappen.
Yeah.
Are there any other drivers that you also like apart from Max, whether it be Formula One, NASCAR,
Mhm.
sports cars? Are there any other drivers that you really respect and admire as a racing fan?
So I'm a big fan of Max, and that has been, that's a sticking point. But Alex Albon is a driver I'm a big fan of. Same with Pierre Gasly.
Yeah,
George Russell, I'm a big fan of. I really, really like George Russell, and just watching him kind of go from Williams up to Mercedes, work his way up through the junior formulas, and go up. I was a big fan of him. Alex Albon and Pierre Gasly, I'm a fan of because of what they've dealt with F1.
yeah.
Like, it hasn't been an easy road for them, especially if you look at Albon,
Hmm.
and Pierre going from Red Bull back. Because it's a very, that's the thing with Red Bull racing. I love Red Bull racing, don't get me wrong, but like, it's very unforgiving. Nick DeVries is a good example. And if
Yep,
you're not familiar with F1, quick rundown: Nick DeVries, very, very accomplished Formula E driver, filled in a reserve role because Alex Albon had appendicitis
yep.
with Williams. Standout points on debut. Immediately gets signed for AlphaTauri for this season. Gets dropped halfway through the season for Daniel Ricciardo. Um,
Yeah.
Also, I love Daniel Ricciardo. Honey Badger is a beautiful
Oh,
human being.
you know what? The real sort of Danny Rick comes out as soon as we go to Kota. You know, the facial
Yep.
hair changes, that good old Texas drawl comes out, y'all. You know, it's the cowboy hat, it's the Stetsons, he loves his barbecue. He's a complete I think the thing is he is the perfect marketing tool for a driver that any Formula One
Yep.
team can have. I have to give a shout out to Liam Lawson because he did a mega job
Yes.
standing in for Danny Rick, who unfortunately, if anyone did see one of the free practice sessions at Zandvoort, Danny Rick ended up crashing and broke one of the metacarpals in his hand, which then
Yeah.
required surgery. But it's good to see him back. Um, yeah, I mean that's pretty cool. That I like what you said there with regards to Alex Albon. You know,
Mhm.
was promoted early, very much like Max was from what was Toro Rosso back in the day is now AlphaTauri. We don't know what it's going to be called next year, but apparently Hugo Boss is going to have a name. Name is probably going to help with regards to the name change on that one, apparently, but we don't know
Who
yet.
knows?
Who knows? Who cares? To be honest with you, I think everyone will still call it AlphaTauri for the first 6 races if there's a name change anyway, especially if your name's David Croft. And I think the thing is, it's good that they have decided to stick with Danny Rick and Yuki Tsunoda, who I think has
Mhm.
been a bit of an unsung hero at AlphaTauri. You know, he's
Yep.
also been one that's been criticised quite a bit, but I think this year he's sort of had to be. You know, Danny Rick's come in because, of course, Helmut Marko.
Yeah.
That's all I'm saying
Yeah,
on that one.
that's
But of
yeah.
course, I think also with the fact that Dietrich Mateschitz is no longer with us, God rest his soul, that Helmut Marko has got I think, probably been given a little bit more power in terms of his role within the Red Bull family, folks. And what I
Mhm.
mean by that is that you're seeing a lot of new drivers now being with the Red Bull Junior squad, such as Arvin Lindblad from the UK. Tim Tramnitz has just recently been signed as a Red Bull Junior driver earlier on this year.
Mhm.
One of my friends actually works with him. Uh, and then you see all these other drivers that have come through the Red Bull Academy, such as Sebastian Buemi, who's now who's been in Formula E now for a handful of years, and in Berlin earlier on this year on round 7, where I was the German circuit commentator, picked up his 16th pole position, which just so happens to match his number 16 on his Envision racing car. You then look at Brendan Hartley, another perfect example. Is with the Red Bull Academy, gets dropped, goes to sports cars, then comes back to, I think was it Toro Rosso at the time when Brendan rejoined? I think it was. Or was it
I
AlphaTauri?
think so, yeah.
Yeah, it was Toro Rosso. He was in for a season, then went back to sports cars, and now has won multiple titles with Toyota, and recently saw the news that he's going to be in the number 10 Minolta Wayne Taylor car for next year, again alongside a good friend of mine, Philippe Albuquerque. And I'm not too sure I think it might have been Jordan that's on the other side of the car. You know what? I'm going to have to. I think let me just have a look, because it did actually break. That news broke before we started recording this, and let's have a look. Yeah, it's under. Yeah, so Brendan Hartley joins Ricky Taylor and Philippe Albuquerque in the number 10. And then, how's this for a lineup, folks? WTR Andretti driver lineup in the number 40 is Jordan Taylor and Louis Delatraz as the full season drivers. And who's joining them for the IMSA Michelin Endurance Cup? Colton Herta. That is two dynamite pairings. But I'm really, really glad to see that drivers like Brendan have landed back on their feet. But yeah, Alex and Pierre, both graduates of the Red Bull Academy. Both have been with Red Bull. Both got dropped back down to AlphaTauri. And I think, as you said, Pierre had a really good result at Interlagos. Alex has had some really good results with Williams. He's been the talisman for the team. I feel for Logan Sargent because he's being given a rough ride as a rookie.
Yeah.
As his teammate.
See, here's the thing with it, though, and this is a part that frustrates me with, F1 Twitter, F1X, whatever we're calling it now. A lot of the drivers go through a lot of hate, but they're all there for a reason.
Yeah.
They've all worked their way forward through junior formulas, through karting days, whatever it may be. They've found their footing somewhere to be one of, the top 20 drivers in the world. That's the thing with F1 is, it's 20 drivers.
Yeah.
And that's all there is to it. Hopefully it'll be 22 or 24 drivers coming up, because I would like to see Cadillac have a car on the grid, but, money becomes an issue always, depending on who you ask. But
and politics.
Politics, money. That's
F1 in a nutshell, folks.
Yep. But yeah, so that's my thing with the drivers. Like, there's not a driver that I dislike. There's ones that frustrate me with certain things. Lance Stroll.
I had my ears were burning as just before you said that name, because I think, okay, yes, Dad is the main bankroller for the team with a conglomerate. Completely understand. Completely understand. There have been sparks of brilliance from the young man, but when your teammate is a multi-time Le Mans winner, has competed in Dakar, has won 2 Formula One world titles, and pips Sergio Perez at the line at over 160 miles an hour at Interlagos to pick up finally another podium for Fernando Alonso.
Overdue.
Long overdue for Aston Martin. You have to wonder, well, if Fernando is probably old enough to be Lance's dad, let's be honest here, at 42 years of age, he's 4 years younger than me, and Fernando still has the hunger, still has the passion, and Lance has flashes of brilliance, and then flashes of I don't know how to explain it without saying an expletive on the show. There are just times when, like you say, I think he's his own worst enemy at times, isn't he?
Well, and I watched a really good video on YouTube recently, and I think it's a Josh Revel video
Hmm.
um, about Lance Stroll leaving Formula One, and it actually makes a good point that Lance would be a good fit in the WEC and running endurance cup for Aston Martin,
Yeah.
and would be would make a good fit there. Now, granted, that video came out before Brazil, and then Lance Stroll went on to qualify, second row, with a very very good run, but. And then you step back a few weeks ago, and Lance Stroll had to get summoned to the stewards because he shoved his trainer on camera and got out of the car and shoved his trainer and stormed off.
Yeah.
And then, the media said, "How's the car?" Or, what was qualifying? And, he basically was just like, "Horrible. Why am I doing this?"
Mm.
And stormed off. He said some choice words that I won't say on the show, but,
Hmm.
it's moments like that. And it's like, top 20 drivers in the world, and it's like, this is what we get. Like, granted, he's there because he is an accomplished junior formula driver. He has worked his way up just like every other driver
Yeah.
has. But it does become the question, especially with Aston Martin. Now, there's rumors that, Lawrence Stroll is selling the team. Whether that's true or not, nobody knows, and we won't know
Mm.
until it actually happens. But it becomes one of those moments where it's like, is this really what we're showing, what we're doing? Like, are we sure about that?
Yeah. I think it's also the fact that in 2025 the Aston Martin Valkyrie will be on the IMSA and the wet grid, especially with Spirit of Race being confirmed as the official works team for IMSA, which I'm actually really, really happy about because you with the connections that Spirit of Race have, the likes say Mike Rockenfeller, he would be an absolute
Mm-hmm.
shoe in for that squad. And if you had somebody like, and folks, don't get it twisted at all. I'm looking at this from a realistic marketing exercise that, like where you see all the drivers that have been in Formula One, have gone to WEC and have won titles. Kobayashi, Buemi, to name but a few. Hulkenberg, when he wasn't in Formula One, he was running. Well, no, when he was in Formula One at Sahara Force India, that was one of the former names of uh, of the team now known as Aston Martin F1. Well, as was it Aston Martin, Aramco Formula One Cognizant Team, or whatever it is. I probably got
Something
it all
along
wrong.
those lines.
Something along those lines, but it's the most long-winded team name ever. Nico Hulkenberg goes and wins Le Mans on his first try with the likes of Nick Tandy and Earl Bamber. And you see that there are so many people that have gone into Formula One, haven't won races. I think Kamui Kobayashi is the last ever Japanese driver at this moment to secure a podium. Tsunoda hasn't achieved that in his Formula One career, folks. Let's not forget that. But the funny thing was, Kamui Kobayashi did it on home soil at Suzuka, of all places, with Sauber, if I remember correctly. So you look at some of the F1 talent on the grid. Of course, Mick Schumacher's being buzzed around as the possibility of maybe going in with Alpine in WEC in the brand new, and I have to say, absolutely lovely looking
Ooh, yes.
A424B. And I love the fact that with Alpine, that they have used the actual Alpine logo as the tail lights on the car. How's that for branding? Because they'll know exactly what car they're trailing down the Mulsanne at Le Mans at the 24 hours next year in mid-June. Yeah, I think if Lance was possibly, I wouldn't say sidestep, but given a different opportunity, I think he'd probably rise to the challenge and go, you know what? I don't have to go 11 tenths. I can go 9.5 tenths and still be
Mm-hmm.
consistent. So, folks, just because they have a multitude of years in Formula One does not mean that those skills will not transfer to a car that's going to have a shed load of downforce, a lot of horsepower, and you're going to be amongst the likes of BMW, Lamborghini, Alpine, Porsche, Caddy in WEC. Because those grids are swelling because of what cars are coming. I mean, like, I have to say, along with the Alpine A424, the new Lamborghini SC63, which is a complete, and the powertrain is a complete departure from what we normally know of for Lamborghinis, where it's like normally if it's an Aventador or the the new generation Countach, which is a 6.5 litre naturally aspirated V12. They're shoehorning something. I think it's like a 3.8 litre twin turbo V8 in that
Yeah.
SC63. Completely different engine architecture, but it's the way that supercars are going now that you're seeing this. As we all know, Brad, that it's that transfer of race technology to the road, whereby they've come out with the Revuelto, which is a hybrid supercar. And now they're going to probably be, through the SC63, developing more compact, still high power, but turbocharged engines that are going to be hybrid propelled as well. And they'll be going into the road cars in the not too distant future, even though Lamborghini is also one of these supercar brands that is planning full electrification in the years to come, especially like Lotus now doing the Emira, which is the last ever internal combustion engine from Hethel. And even I'm surprised at that. But yeah, like you say, Lance Stroll is one of those people that could benefit from a move across. I think, who knows, Mick Schumacher might do just like Antonio Giovinazzi has done with AF Corsa with the 499,
Yep.
which has been an absolute revelation to WEC. It's just really, really good. Who else in Formula One would you say, apart from Lance Stroll, hasn't possibly showcased what they're fully capable of? I mean, yes, we know that Nico Hülkenberg has never got a podium in Formula One, even though when he was at Renault, he nearly did at Hockenheim before that big old rainy day. I think it was 2019, wasn't it? It was that big old rainy day, and everyone started falling off the track. Even Hamilton fell off the track. But I think, there's a few other drivers in there that I think Esteban Ocon, okay, Pierre Gasly, they are both race winners, but they haven't had either the consistency. I mean, Esteban was on the sidelines after being dumped by Racing Point when he was alongside Checo, and they had that nice little altercation down from La Source into Eau Rouge one particular year. I think I think there's so many drivers in the younger tier formulas. Felipe Drugovich, perfect example. He's now a reserve driver again for 2024 for Aston Martin. And over a year ago, he was the FIA Formula 2 champion. So I'm wondering, when is Lawrence Stroll going to say to Lance, I want to put Felipe in the car, mate? That there is, even a dad will run out of patience, even though he is the man that leads the management of the board at Aston Martin. He's got to look at it and say, Singapore, big accent, Lance is out of the race. And also, I think for Japan as well, if I remember correctly.
Yeah.
And they didn't run the car there either. So that was 2 Grand Prix after one big mistake in qualifying, and Lance just completely bins the car. This is no disrespect to Lance at all. He was pushing, but it just comes to a point where they have to say, you know what, we've got to cut our losses. And if they say, Lawrence, it isn't working with Lance, we don't know why, and no matter what we try, it doesn't seem to work. We're running out of ideas. And he might just say, actually, we'll keep him in the car for 2024, keep him alongside Fernando, and then say to Lance, right, we're sticking you in WEC. We think it's for your own good. There probably will be a time when father and son will have a conversation, because there was all those canny rumours about the fact that he was planning to ditch F1 for a professional tennis career, which I thought, who on earth has brought this curveball into the mix,
F1 Twitter. That's all you have to know. F1 Twitter. Someone can literally just tweet, I don't want... What was it that happened last week? I don't want to believe the paddock. And it just set off a string of things.
Oh, yeah, it was
what was that? Right after Mexico or right before Mexico?
I think it was Alberto Vargas, a Spanish journalist, that said, I don't want to hear any of these rumours in the paddock. And then he had to apologise for said tweet as well.
Now, granted, Will Buxton, kind of fueled the flame with a couple of fun little GIFs that he quote tweeted, but
That's Will. That's
You
Will in
know,
a nutshell. That's Will.
yeah.
I mean, the thing is, Will has been part of that paddock for over what is it now? 300 Grand Prix. So well done, Will.
Yep.
Well done, buddy. That was funny enough. That was at yeah, that was actually at the Autodromo Hermano Rodriguez at the Mexican Grand Prix, Mr. 300. So well done, Will. Um, yeah, that's crazy how long he's been in that paddock for. 300 Grand Prix and still going. But yeah, I think it is the case that as soon as paddock rumours start to happen and then silly season. I like the fact that Haas were very, very quick to retain K-Mag and Hulk. I have to say
Smart
that
move.
was actually a very, very good move for Gene and Gunter to do that, because it just means that at least they can try and help develop that car. And there's been some really good flashes of pace from Haas as well. I still remember K-Mag's pole last year and the
Yep.
celebration when he got out of the cockpit. It was just iconic. But yeah, there could be quite a few other drivers that we could talk about here, but we've only got a limited amount of time as such. Have you sort of ever been starstruck meeting a person within motorsport, like a personality or a racing driver you've ever met before?
So in-person motorsport starstruck, I think the biggest moment I had was when I was in high school. Me and my dad went to a sprint car race. It was actually Bulls Gap, Tennessee, and it was Casey Kane. And I got to meet Casey Kane and get his autograph.
Hmm.
And that's probably the biggest motorsport celebrity I've met.
Right.
I haven't done a lot of real life motorsport stuff. Unfortunately, both combination of finances and a world lockdown in the mix. Right as I got into motorsports, um, that can start a whole conversation about is motorsport becoming inaccessible because of pricing? Especially with the Vegas Grand Prix
Yeah,
coming up.
my ears were burning. I was waiting for the words
Yep.
Vegas to. Yeah, well, that's yeah. I think it's quite funny what's been happening with Vegas, because they've just had SEMA there as well, with
Yep.
quite a few of the YouTubers out there like Tavarish, Shmee150, Matt Armstrong, whose engine on his UK originally crash damaged RS6. He went and did a drag race. The car had been on a container ferry from Portsmouth to LA
Mhm.
docks, and yeah, he went and did a drag race. And as soon as the car hit 100 miles an hour, engine warning light, limp home mode, and then yeah, and Matt had to get it trailered to SEMA.
Uh,
But
man.
that's the thing. Yeah, so SEMA's just happened. There was, I think one of the waterfalls, I think just outside the Bellagio, has been completely drained in order for
Yep.
spectator grandstands to be built. There's been all this hoo-ha about the glass panels that have been put on bridges across where where the racetrack is going to be, and
Yep.
people have started ripping off the the sort of like the I think it was like some sort of like white tint that was put on it, or wrap,
Yeah, it's
like
like a
just to
privacy
rebel
film.
the privacy zones, which was I just thought, hang on a second, look, and then I also hear about the fact that hospitality packages at some of the hotels that will have premium paddock access and also premium viewing sites for part of the Grand Prix with
Mhm.
additional screens and all that kind of stuff not being sold. Yeah, you take it to somewhere like Vegas. Okay, yes, the costs are going to be extortionate, but when you have the top tier in single seater motorsport controlled by an American media company, they are
Yep.
going to try and they said that it was going to be a case of, we want to bring the Super Bowl wow factor to Formula One. And okay, yeah, they're trying their damnedest. They're trying to change things up. I mean, I still remember in Formula One, you didn't just have qualifying; you had pre-qualifying. So if you didn't get through to quali, you were done. That was it. Your race
Yep.
weekend was gone. Whereas now it's like at Brazil, it was free practice, Then you had to lock in your setup for
In an
the sprint.
hour.
Yeah, so your sprint shootout, your qualifying, then your sprint. I have to say, out of all the sprint races I've watched, Brazil was the most exciting. Brazil has been hands down the most exciting sprint race in Formula One history so far since they brought that into it. But what the
Yep.
one thing that I don't like is that they have to fix their setups with limited time availability. What they need to do, and I'm not being critical of Formula One. I'm just saying that I think what they need to do is after the sprint, stop the parc ferme rubbish and let the teams get ready for the actual race. Because once you lock in that setup, that's why Mercedes are all over the shop. They did really really well in the sprint race, and then when it got to the main race,
Done.
there was nothing in the tank for Mercedes. They were at everyone's. Everyone was at their door. Everyone was out their
Yep.
door, and Toto Wolff completely 100% was right in saying, "Yeah, we don't know what's going on." Because there's the teams are now concentrating on next year, and I think Christian Horner sending the biggest warning shot, saying, "Yeah, we haven't really had to do much to the current car," and I'm like thinking, "Well, there comes another Formula One title for Max Verstappen next year, straight
Yeah.
away." Because
It's
when you know that you've got Adrian Newey in your corner, okay, yes, members of Red Bull Racing have moved to other teams, but it hasn't stopped the team that was so dominant in the early 2010s. So from 2010 to 2013, the most dominant man in Formula One at that time, Sebastian Vettel. 4 titles on the bounce. And it was only when hybrid power came in and Mercedes got the jump on everybody else, because
Yep.
the big story was that Mercedes developed 3 power units. The one that was heavy, cumbersome, but was bulletproof. Then they had the one that was powerful, but brittle. And then they found that clear medium. And the first time you knew that Red Bull were on the back foot was at Melbourne. Because Sebastian Vettel didn't make it to the end of the race. He had a lack of power, and it was game over. And then Mercedes had been on a tear. And even Toto Wolff, when we knew what the cars were going to look like in some way, shape, or form for the new regs from 2022, he said we might not be the dominant force. And was he right? He's not a
Yep.
fortune teller, but he definitely was. And Red Bull, when there's been a regulation shift that they know will work in their favour, have taken full advantage of it. Okay, yes, Mercedes had to plan a bit more for 2022, I think. I mean, even with the Coke bottle, the zero side pods that we saw, which didn't quite work out, and they've had to move to everybody else. I think it just goes to show that you can be the biggest powerhouse, and once your dominant streak gets overturned, then everyone knows that you're vulnerable, don't they?
And that's the thing with motorsport, period. Like, even looking outside of Formula One,
Yeah.
like, you look at IMSA this year, very, very clear dominance there. You look at, rally, very, very clear dominance in rally for, teams. And it's just, in motorsport, when you get it right, you get it very, very right.
Hmm.
And when you get it wrong, you get it very, very wrong. And you end up just scratching your head. You mentioned it, as soon as the new regs came out and they, showed off the cars and stuff, the first thing Toto Wolff said, he was like, yeah, we may be backwards a bit. And it goes to show that sometimes you just know. Um, I have a feeling that a lot of teams are, would love to get their hands on Adrian Newey's little black notebook that he carries, because the secrets that are in that notebook are legendary right now, especially because I don't think the regs change again until what, 2025, 2026?
2026, when Ford officially become a partner of Red Bull Powertrains. And one of the things, folks, is that Honda has never really been out of Formula One.
Mm-hmm.
Not No,
Nope.
and the reason being, they said, yeah, we're withdrawing from Formula One, but we're still going to work with Red Bull because Red Bull managed to get, thanks to the cooperation of the Honda Racing Corporation (HRC), to get the intellectual property of the power units, which was absolutely crucial. And some of the team from Honda, who were employed by Honda, now work for Red Bull. So that intellectual property that Red Bull now have possession of through Honda, I think is going to work very, very well. I will be very, very interested to see what Farley and Ford and everybody at the team at Dearborn do with regards to the collaboration. I think it's really, really good that the Ford name is coming back into Formula One, even though it is not in a internal combustion sense, but it's the electric propulsion, because Ford now have got this young lady by the name of Lexi Limitless, who is going around in a Ford Explorer EV, which is a car that's also known in the US. So if people might know the Ford Explorer that I know of, I still remember the 1990s car that had a massive problem with recalls back in the day. But now Ford have brought out their own set of EVs, such as the F-150 Lightning, the Mustang Mach-E, which has also got a GT version. But they've also gone with the Explorer for a more a global car, like we've seen, like say the Fiesta. The Mondeo was also a global car for Ford Motor Company, and I worked with the brand for multiple years over my automotive stretch. But I think I'll be interested to see how the collaboration between Dearborn and Milton Keynes works out, because of course Red Bull are now putting a lot of infrastructure into Red Bull powertrains for ahead of 2026 and trying to get the jump maybe on the opposition. So by doing that now, by getting that collaboration with Jim Farley and the team at Ford, could stand them in good stead for 2026. But we don't know how that landscape is going to change, Brad, do we? Because there could be a new set of set aero regs, set stock components that the teams might not have control over. And I think when you look at Formula 2 and Formula 3, there's a lot of stock componentry. There's not much that the teams have a direct impact over. You can do like wing adjustments and other bits and pieces, but you're quite limited on what you can do with these cars. And then also there's the push to 100% sustainable fossil-free fuels from 2026 onwards for Formula One. So there is a lot that we're still, I mean, even though we're coming to the end of 2023, we're still a full 2 seasons away from really finding out what these cars are going to be capable of, what they're going to look like. Are there going to be any changes on the aero tolerances that the key teams can do? Are they going to have less wiggle room than we've had since the 2022 regulations, which were actually put back 2 years because of COVID? There's so much that's always up in the air about Formula One, because you don't know what the FIA is going to decide. Are they going to change the goalposts again? Are they going to increase a further clampdown on the cost cap? That's another big thing that's now in Formula One. There's just so much that could change in the next 2 seasons. Where could Red Bull have the advantage on everybody, or are we going to see a new Formula One superpower come forward? That's the big thing.
Williams Racing 2026 onward confirmed. Champions over and over. I would not complain a bit.
No,
but yeah, it's see, and again, that's the thing with like Formula One, FIA. You never know, and Red Bull could get it completely wrong, like Mercedes did, and completely drop back. They could start out strong, and then other people develop past them. You just never know, and I really like F3 and F2 races. And it goes back to, what you mentioned. It's very cookie cutter. You don't get to develop a bunch of spec parts. You don't get the issue of, well, maybe we just developed the car wrong. Maybe we just don't have enough money. You're taking $1 a chassis and you're throwing it together and you're racing. That's where you're at. You have your spec components. That's what you run. You don't get to say, well, if I change, the wing this way or the body this way, I can eke out another 0.2 in the corner and move forward and get 0.2 G more. And, the driver can stand it. He can get another ½ second a lap on the field. It's just go out there, and I want to see the pace of the drivers. So you end up with, George Russell, good example. All the way up through junior formulas was an absolute dominant beast.
Yeah.
Gets to F1, goes to Williams Racing, is unheard of for seasons on end. Valtteri announces he's going to Alfa Romeo. They shoe in George. And it's like, George was so dominant in the junior formulas. But then he hits F1, and because he's with a backmarker team, you don't see any of that from him. Because he's constantly just fighting a car that's developed wrong. Or, I won't say developed wrong, but there's not enough money and backing to develop the car into a competitive spec.
Yeah.
Which, granted, when he was racing for Williams, that's a whole nother conversation. Dalton Capital stepping in is probably the best thing that happened to Williams Racing recently.
Yeah, I'd agree with that, but you cannot forget the impact that Frank and Claire Williams. I mean, Frank, of course, we lost a few years ago. God rest his soul. But I think without the Williams family having brought that team, and it was one of the real last garagistas, and for those wondering about the terminology, where it was effectively building a car out of a garage, but with the multi-million-pound facilities that these Formula One teams run these days, is absolutely filled to the brim with the latest technology, the latest tooling, the latest generation of mechanics, engineers, electronic specialists, those that can do all the carbon fiber with the vacuum claves and all that, the autoclaves and that kind of stuff. There's a lot of technology and a lot of unsung heroes in Formula One, because we as racing fans, we look to the drivers, but then you look at the people behind the scenes. Of course, you cannot forget about the impact that Christian Horner has made when he came in after Jaguar were bought out by Red Bull, and he was the youngest ever team principal in Formula One history at just, I think, 32. And you look at him now, and he is one of the most biggest power players, and he has got a sight game unlike anybody else. That guy knows how to work the press, knows how to work things into his favor, and he doesn't go ring a ring of roses, a pocket full of posies. It doesn't go around the houses.
Right.
But he knows exactly the situation and how to play it to his advantage. And that's the sign of a good team principal. And then you see people like Fred Vasseur, who is, I think, was it earlier on this year, he was confirmed as Ferrari team principal, replacing Mattia Binotto. And you have to look at how Fred Vasseur, in one season, has managed to get Ferrari to a point where they're actually able to get pole positions again, and also win a race this year, let's not forget. But there are still, I think, at Maranello, a couple of flies in the ointment too many. Considering the fact that at the very same point on the Interlagos circuit, what happened 1 year after? Charles Leclerc goes off at exactly the same point, has the same hydraulics failure, and pretty much a mirror. I have to feel sorry for Charles. And Brad knows exactly what I'm talking about. 12 months on from having that lock up of the hydraulics and it spins the car around to Charles into the wall on the formation lap. I have to say that at the minute, Charles Leclerc is the unluckiest man when it comes to being in a Formula One car.
It is painful to be a Ferrari fan, and I apologize if Matt Gallagher ever sees this, but his pain is my comedy every Sunday. Because every Sunday.
Yeah. Yes, because P1 with Matt and Tommy, they posted on Instagram. And I'm gonna whilst Brad is laughing, you're gonna see it on the screen now, and watch Matt Gallagher's response when Tommy just goes, "Oh no," and then you look on Matt's face, and what's the first thing that's flipped over in his hands? A Ferrari snapback. Yeah,
It's so painful to be a
it, it,
Ferrari
it,
fan.
it is. I mean, they haven't won a world title since 2007. That's a decade and a half. I
It,
mean, after Kimi beating Fernando and Lewis, who was in his rookie season, no less as well, by literally not even a couple of points. I think it was 1 point at the end of it. And then you look at the run of dominance from Michael Schumacher. It's like these dominant fits and starts happen with certain talents of their generation. So, like, you
mhm,
have Michael, you have Lewis. Well, yeah, before Lewis, you had Seb. Then
yep.
you had Lewis. Now it's Max. And he's contracted now until, I think it's 2028 with Red Bull.
Mhm.
2028. And the guy is only 26 years old. And if people are going to say, yeah, he won't beat Lewis's World Championship spree, well,
Got time.
folks, if he has a competitive car right up until 2028, now bearing in mind he will be in his early 30s at that point, 31. If at that, so we've got 2024, 2025. There's a possibility that Max might be the first person to actually win 5 world titles on the bounce in Formula One history. If that's to happen, that would be unheard of. Absolutely unheard of. And then you look at it, so you got 2024, 2025. Let's say hypothetically Red Bull again have mastered the regs. So 2026, 2027, 2028. You add that up, that's more titles than Michael Schumacher if he wins that many on the bounce. But we all know that with the regulation shift, there can be a casualty or casualties of war. We have seen it with Mercedes over the past couple of seasons, and it's been difficult to watch that. But it's also opened up the opportunities for other teams, like McLaren, for instance, Aston Martin, who are Mercedes customer engine partners. And when the works team is, pardon my French here, is doing shittier in their results in comparison with the customer teams, you know that there is a problem lying somewhere. And also the fact that Mercedes' chief technical officer has left them.
Yep.
That, when you look at it, I think it was, I'm trying to remember his name now.
Mike Elliott.
That's it, Mike Elliott. Swapping places with James Allison. So now, where does that lead? The big question, and don't worry, you don't need to answer this, Brad, but I want to put this out to you folks there. What do you think this means for Mercedes up until the regulation change? I'll leave that one for you folks out there, so leave your comments in the description down below. We want to see what you think about how Mercedes is going to spring back with the W15, W16 over the next 2 years, because those 2 years for Mercedes could be crucial in terms of them staying in Formula One. I'll be completely honest with you. You don't just have that dominant streak for so many years and then have 2 years that have been, to say lamentable, would
Painful.
probably be a complete understatement. That Toto Wolff, who is a third owner of the team, is probably at this point not slamming headphones on tables like he did a few years ago. But I'm sure that he would have a very, very few choice words with the team, as if to say, right, we need to get our heads around this situation. We know that we've got a cost cap, but we need to look at every single possible opportunity within the scope of the regulations, the scope of what we are able to do under the cost cap, on how we can make this car for next year better than what we've had over the last 2 seasons. Because I'll be completely honest with you, as an eighth German, I am disappointed for Mercedes, but it is never easy in Formula One. There is always, as you said,
Yep.
you can be hero and then you can be zero. So we'll leave that answer for you folks to put down in the questions below. we'll get on to the next question because considering the time difference between me and Brad, he's 5 hours behind me. So it is early morning whilst I'm recording this in the United Kingdom. But don't worry, this is all part of the fun. What inspires? I'm going to use a different play. I normally ask people who are their commentary inspirations, but for you, sir, what inspires you as a commentator? Is the question I'm now going to ask you. What inspires you as a commentator?
I think the biggest thing that inspires me is success with myself. Like never I never feel like I've done enough. Like I've never feel like I've given my best. I'm never satisfied with the job I've done.
Hmm.
Um, Now, granted, there's some conversations there. There's some topics you can dive into, but one of the big things that I've battled with, and I think this is kind of a universal conversation
Hmm.
and sort of a universal experience, but like there's been a lot of mental health stuff that I've gone through in the past few years, especially.
Yeah.
Um, and commentary for me was always an inspiration of an outlet because it was that creative outlet. And the nice thing with pole position racing, when I came in, they gave me pure creative freedom. um so I was streaming, I was uploading to YouTube, running the social medias. Like that was my bread and butter, my baby, where I could figure out what I liked doing, figure out what worked, what didn't work.
Yeah.
How do you grow a Twitch platform? How do you grow the league? What can I do? How do they get sponsors? What can I do to help, grow this league, move this forward, to find, turn this passion of mine into something that makes money. And one day maybe I'll get lucky enough to do it full time and pay the bills.
Mm.
um so that's the biggest inspiration for me, is that drive for something more, and trying to push forward, trying to be like you one day, just for simplistic sake, or George Morgan, or Will Buxton, trying to move forward to the point where I'm doing something I enjoy full time, and it's not working behind a desk every day and making a corporation money. It's doing the things I enjoy.
Mm.
That's for me like that biggest inspiration with commentary. And again, seeing people enjoy what I do, so it's so cool when I post a clip on social media
Yeah.
and seeing friends and family like it and react and go, "This is really cool." It's not something I know. Or having those conversations at work with customers, you know, and them bringing up racing. I've got a really good customer that goes to Eldora Speedway every weekend, during the summers and races and stuff. And he found out that I do sim racing commentary because he found something on Facebook, and he asked me about it. He said, "Hey, you commentate on stuff online. Is there dirt track racing online?" And I was like, "Yeah, there's World of Outlaw sponsored and different things with iRacing." And showed him links, and he started watching sim racing from it. So that's, I think, the biggest thing for me, is getting more people involved with it.
Yeah.
And again, finding that outlet for myself and that future for myself that goes beyond just, sitting in my bedroom and doing this, on Wednesday nights, Saturdays, and Sundays.
Yeah, that's a pretty powerful. That's why I wanted to rephrase the question because you could say, who are your commentary inspirations, and there'll be people that will be talking about quite a few people, like say Murray Walker, who would have been 100 this year. God rest his soul. I can't believe it's been 3 years since Murray Walker passed, and he was the voice of Formula One when I was growing up. People say that David Croft's an inspiration. I've had
Hmm.
people on this show actually saying that I've been an inspiration to them, which for me is also quite a quite a humbling statement to say because, like,
Right.
you sort of think, hang on, I'm somebody else's inspiration. And it's when it dawns on you that you've impacted this person in a positive way that you then understand, well, I am doing something right. If someone's taking inspiration from me,
Hmm.
and sometimes they do say that imitation is the sincerest form of flattery. Don't get that one twisted, folks.
Right.
But us as commentators, we have different styles. Whereas Dan, for instance, Brad has a different style to me, but our styles mix well because we know how each other works, and we've worked with each other multiple times before. So when you know who you're working with, it's quite gratifying in the fact that you know that you're making a positive impression on somebody else who is newer, who hasn't got as much skin in the game as you have,
Mm.
but understands and asks questions about how you operate. So, like when Brad asked me to do a show reel, I was like, okay, send me all the clips, and I looked through and I went, okay, which ones where there's excitement? What about where there's bit where there's comedic moments, such as the one where your co-commentator on pole position racing lost it, which was, I have to say,
Miami.
yeah, he absolutely lost it, and it had to go in the show reel because Brad was going, I have got absolutely no idea what's going on here, and your co-commentator lost it, and I just thought that's a perfect thing to put on the show reel because it does show the human side of commentators. People
Mhm.
might think we are machines. Well, not quite, because I'll be completely honest with you. Earlier on this week, before recording this episode with Brad on Monday, my body was not wanting to play ball. And there are times
Yep.
when you do have to listen to what your body tells you. I had a severe migraine. I had to go to bed. I didn't get much sleep the night before. And then on the Monday morning, I just messaged my sister and just went, I'm staying in bed today.
Yep.
And there are times when you do need to take a step back and just go, right, okay, this day is one where I need to sort of chill out. I've still got more work. I've still got work to do for the remainder of this year because my calendar doesn't finish until the 18th of December. But that just goes to show that, yeah, what Brad wants to be is sort of like be in a doing this full time, because when you're doing this full time, and granted the hours are long, arduous, you're doing a lot of prep work, but when you are doing something you love and you're getting paid to do it, it never feels like a day of work in your life. The last three
Yep.
years for me have flown by as a full-time commentator, content creator, voiceover bloke, whatever I've done. I have looked at it and I've enjoyed every single step of the way, and I continue to do so. So I really like how you just said that I I'm always looking at how I can improve, and there's always a good adage here, which is you're only as good as your last performance, and that's very true. That's very akin to what you just said there, Brad, as well. Right, we've got only a handful of questions to go before we wrap things up here on episode number 29. So, Brad, I want you to name the top three moments in motorsport that come to your head, but there is a little bit of a twist that I need to put onto this,
Okay.
involving other commentators on a broadcast, not including you, but top three moments where you have completely lost and said, I cannot believe this is happening, and it's involved IRL or sim racing. You know, what are those the first three moments that come into your head, buddy?
So I think the first one, and again, this is just Formula One. Two of these are going to be Formula One because they
Okay.
have to be. It's just welcome to my bread and butter of things. The first one is, I'm just going to say a quote, and I think you'll be able to name it. These are critical corners for the world championship.
Yep, Abu Dhabi 2021, Max Verstappen versus Lewis Hamilton.
Yep.
Yep.
Um. So, and then Silverstone that same year.
Oh yes, the
That,
fateful
those
day when.
Abu Dhabi and Silverstone 21. Those two in 2021. There were a lot of big moments in 2021, but yeah, these are critical corners for the Grand Prix. Lewis up the inside, and then the World Championship can only go one way, but it's going Dutch for 2021. Those are the two big F1 moments that come to mind for me.
Mhm.
And then there's a NASCAR one. So I think the big NASCAR one is Daytona 2001. When Waltrip won and Daryl was commentating and going across the line that same year when Dale Earnhardt wrecked.
Yeah.
and there was all of that going on, and nobody really knew what to look at, what to do, and it was kind of just a big moment of, can't believe my brother's winning the Daytona 500, but also I hope Dale's okay. That
Yeah.
that moment where it's that weird confusion. And if you don't know the clip I'm talking about, look up Daytona 500 2001
Yeah.
last lap. Because you're crying and it's like, my brother just won the Daytona 500, but also my really good friend's in a wreck. I hope he's okay. I don't know what's going on.
Yeah. That was the
And it kind of,
yeah, that
it's,
I remember that as well. And yeah, for those that don't know about the tragedy that happened that year, that unfortunately the eliminator passed away after that big wreck at Daytona in 2001. And yeah, I mean, I still remember watching videos about Dale Earnhardt, and of course his son Junior has decided to come back racing again. Crazy man. But I
I love
think it's
Junior.
like the story of how Dale Earnhardt got his racing career going. He was doing everything God sends in order to make ends meet, and then finally gets a works drive, and then that big burly Tash, before Tom Selleck was around in Magnum PI back in the 80s in the 308 GTS in Hawaii. But it was like, that's why he was, the Daytona 500 had always been his cursed race, always had been, and he managed to win it. But then it was the race where we lost him, basically because of the fact that when he wrecked, the exhaust pipe down the side of the car pumped carbon monoxide into the cockpit, and yeah, it basically meant that Dale had been overcome significantly, and that's why you look at how modern day safety has come about when people started going nuts about the aero screen in IndyCar and the halo in Formula One. You look at how safety has evolved when you look at Guan Yu Zhou's big wreck in 2022 at Silverstone. Charles Leclerc back in, I think it was 2019 when he was at Sauber at Alfa Romeo.
Max and Lewis coming together at Monza.
Exactly. There have been times when the halo and the aero screen have saved lives. So don't knock safety, folks. And when you think about the person that really, really instigated safety back in the 70s after the death of his teammate Francois Sever, a certain man by the name of Jackie Stewart was the man that really instigated things happening in Formula One, and that has set a knock-on trend. But yeah, no, those are three really good, really really good moments to talk about there. Two from Formula One from 2021, and of course the fateful day in 2001 at the Daytona 500 in NASCAR. Well, you've already talked about your future goals and commentary, so you've actually managed to forwards. I think it's like we've gone back in time, as the saying goes, with Back to the Future and Doc Brown and Marty McFly. But Brad, your final question on Commentator's Corner. Now, this is where we flip the script a little bit, because I don't tell my guests this until I let them know here on the show. That I will ask you the question to you, and then I will then respond in kind as to what my answer to it would be. So, Bradley Dalton, your final question here on episode 29 of Commentator's Corner is as follows. If you had no glass ceiling when it came to budget, and you had the opportunity to drive a road or a race car of your choice, and you can pick more than one if you so desire, you can select a circuit where you drive it at, and you have to tell me why. And then I will respond accordingly, depending on the car or cars and the circuit that you choose.
There's two cars.
Okay.
Well, actually, yeah. There's two cars. One of them is Cadillac GTP. I would love a chance to drive one of those in real life. And the other one is, surprisingly, I'm going to say an F2 car. I don't think I'd want to drive an F1 car. Okay. Because the thing is with F2 cars, it goes back to what I said earlier. They're spec cars. They're a little bit more accessible, and I think there's a little bit more to them. And it really shows the skill of the driver.
Okay.
As opposed to, the performance of the car. If I had to do an F1 car, it's probably 2010 Red Bull. Again, Red Bull fanatic.
So
Because,
the the first of 4 titles that Sebastian Vettel took.
Yep. And for track, I'm gonna go unconventional because because you can't actually run F1 cars there, even though Sebastian Vettel did it over the summer. I'd want to do a lap of the Nordschleife.
Okay.
Because it is a very Nordschleife or Le Mans, I think, because it's tracks that you don't get to run in F1, but they are iconic in their own right. They're not, the Spa-Francorchamps. They're not the Codas, but they're iconic tracks. They're tracks that everyone knows and everyone will recognize.
So you're talking about the Caddy DPI VR GTP car, and we're also talking about the Renault-powered RB6 from Red Bull Racing, which was the RS27 2010 engine at the Nordschleife. I like that. I like that. Okay. Right. The track I'm going to pick is one we wouldn't see Formula One cars running at, but we will see this car running at next year. So the Formula One car that I will go is the MP425, driven by Lewis Hamilton and Jenson Button. So in the same calendar year. And we are going German for the GTP car that currently runs in IMSA with Team RLL. I am, of course, talking about the BMW M V8 Hybrid that will be running with Team WRT next year in the FIA World Endurance Championship. And I think you pretty much know which circuit I'm going to be talking about, the Circuit de la Sarthe at Le Mans.
Yep.
So there you go, folks. That's it. Episode 29, done, dusted, and the white flag's already gone. Barney, the flagman in iRacing, has already waved the checkered. Brad, thank you so much for coming on the show, mate. It's been an absolute pleasure to have you. Finally, before I let you go, where can people find you on socials?
Yeah, so Twitter, BradRad 2019, Instagram, Brad's Rad Commentary, YouTube, Bradley Dalton, and Twitch, BradRad 2019 as well. Definitely looking to do more behind the scenes stuff and kind of, get a more regular posting schedule than what I currently have. So look for lots of clips, lots of behind the scenes things.
Brilliant. Well, that's it for episode 29, folks. Episode 30 is around the next Apex. Thank you very much to everyone watching and liking, sharing, and subscribing on YouTube. A big thank you to everyone that continues to listen on the audio version of this, which is available on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, and also on Downforce Radio, the nation's motorsport station. Off of Brad, thank you very much from me, Alex. We'll see you next time for the next episode, coming very soon, where we hit 30 here on Commentator's Corner. Until next time, keep it pinned, stay safe, and see you again soon. Goodbye.